Now on BBC Scotland, we join Rebecca and Martin for your news from Scotland and the world on the 9.
It's Wednesday evening. Hello and welcome to the 9.
Tonight, Scotland's highest court rules that Boris Johnson misled the Queen.
Oh.
3 judges rule the Prime Minister's decision to prorogue Parliament was unlawful. So will MPs return to the Commons?
A special report from South Africa on the British military veterans working to save some of the world's most endangered animals.
The transition was pretty tough, and I was lost for a couple of years. Now I can use those soldiering skills I gained in the military and use it for, as I see it, a better cause.
Also tonight, a development in Scotland's longest-running missing persons investigation. A 77-year-old man is charged with the murder of Renee McRae and her son Andrew more than 40 years ago.
And is Scottish football value for money? We look at the price we're prepared to pay to watch our national game.
A new twist in the Brexit story. Less than 2 days after the Parliament in Westminster was shut down, prorogued, judges here in Scotland's highest court have ruled that that move by Boris Johnson's government was against the law. And they didn't hold back. The judges said the Prime Minister was motivated by the improper purpose of stymieing Parliament, that he wanted to prevent MPs from holding the government to account in the run-up to Brexit. And they said the advice he gave the Queen was simply unlawful.
The UK government's appealed the decision by the Court of Session in Edinburgh, and it'll be up to the UK Supreme Court to have the final say next week. Remember, judges in England and Scotland had previously ruled that suspending parliamentary business was a political matter. But opposition MPs have been demanding Parliament is reopened in what's been yet another day of political drama. The Nine's chief news correspondent James Cook reports.
10 a.m. in Edinburgh, and a court founded nearly 500 years ago is about to send a political shockwave through modern-day Britain.
Each opinion expresses the view that the advice given by the government to Her Majesty the Queen to prorogue Parliament from 9th September to 14th October was unlawful, and that therefore the prorogation itself is unlawful.
Emerging from court, triumphant, the SNP's Joanna Cherry, who had led the group of more than 75 politicians which brought the legal challenge.
This is a unanimous decision by Scotland's highest court that the prorogation of Parliament by Boris Johnson was unlawful. Now, for every moment Parliament remains prorogued, the British government are breaking the law. So we, as politicians, are calling for Parliament to be recalled so that we can get on with scrutinising what this government is up to in relation to Brexit.
This was the moment, now ruled unlawful, and the judgment deepens the crisis facing the Prime Minister. Because the 3 judges simply didn't believe him when he said asking the Queen to suspend Parliament had nothing to do with Brexit.
If it were to be the case that the government had misled the Queen about the reasons for suspending Parliament and the motives for it, that would be a very serious matter indeed. Indeed, in my view, would then be the moment for Mr Johnson to resign, and very swiftly.
We dispute that he acted unlawfully, and we look to the Supreme Court judgment next week when they hope that they find in the government's favour that we acted completely legally and lawfully, and that Her Majesty the Queen was in no way misled.
Well, it's the Scottish court, and I suspect other courts will disagree with them. It's not the High Court of England or the United Kingdom, and they'll presumably go through that trail.
Comments like that, and a report, since denied, that Downing Street regarded the Scottish judges as biased, are piling pressure on the union.
I think that they are impartial. But I'm saying that many people, many Leave voters, many people up and down the country are beginning to question the partiality of the judges. That's just a fact. People are saying this all the time. They're saying, why are judges getting involved in politics?
Right, just look over there.
In Westminster, opponents of the Prime Minister are now demanding that Parliament is immediately recalled.
It's astonishing that we are even in this situation, that we have a Prime Minister that is so determined to evade scrutiny and accountability that he's prepared to shut down Parliament for 5 weeks at a time of national crisis.
Whatever happens next week, we will continue to press for Parliament to be recalled so that we can question the Prime Minister.
But the High Court in London has already rejected a similar challenge. Both cases now head to the UK Supreme Court next week, when judges will rule under intense pressure on the prorogation of Parliament. James Cook, BBC News.
Well, here to discuss this is Dr Nick McCarroll from Glasgow Caledonian University, a lecturer in law. And in Edinburgh is the former Supreme Court Judge Lord Hope. To you in a second, Nick McCarroll. But first, I want to speak to you, Lord Hope. You were one of the panel of judges, I think, who allowed Boris Johnson to prorogue Parliament. Given the court's decision this morning, I'm bound to ask you, did you get this wrong?
I think you've got the nouns wrong. I wasn't a panel of judges. I was part of a commission which was appointed to give effect to Her Majesty's wish that Parliament should be prorogued. So it's a different thing. I was not sitting as a judge. I was sitting as convener of the crossbench peers.
OK, well, so on that, because this is central to the way the court made its decision today, were you presented with reasoning then by the government as to why they wanted to prorogue?
No, and I think people need to be very careful about what facts they assume are in play here. As far as I understand it, what happened was that the Privy Council, 3 people, went to Balmoral and asked Her Majesty to make an order, which she duly did. Boris Johnson was not there. There was no conversation between him and the Queen in which he was asked to, or did indeed give his reasons for what he was asking for. And I'm not sure that the Privy Councillors did either, because these sessions in Privy Council, when it meets, are very formal. And what happens is that an order is presented to the Queen, she's asked to approve it, and she does. We don't know exactly what happened there, and I think to suggest that people lied to the Queen is stretching the facts beyond what we really know.
So are you questioning the court ruling from this morning in that case?
No, it's a different point. I mean, I think one can very easily infer from from the timetable what the basis of Boris Johnson's motive was. That's a different thing. I mean, you can criticise his motive, but what I'm saying is, please don't criticise Her Majesty and don't suggest that there was lying to Her Majesty in any way. We don't know that. But what we do know, and can easily find out by checking the dates, is that Parliament has been prorogued long before it should have been, and was indeed remaining out of action for a week when it should have been recalled, and one can question very much the motives. I don't question the Inner House's conclusion on the motive, but there's a very serious issue, which is the dispute between the 2 courts as to whether the courts should be involved in this at all. That's a real issue as to whether the court should treat this as a political matter in which they should not engage.
Well, given that the court is now involved, given that the monarch is involved, and given the state of Parliament and the absence of MPs from Parliament at the moment, the phrase constitutional crisis is being bandied around at the moment. Is that an exaggeration?
No, it's not, but I do question whether you're right to involve Her Majesty. I think everybody would say that she is outside this. It's all about Boris Johnson, what he was up to. And that has undoubtedly created a constitutional crisis, and the Inner House's finding, it can't be changed. He's made his finding. They've not yet made any order, so we don't know what follows from the finding, but the finding itself is there, and it has huge political consequences.
Sure. I want to come back to you in a second, Lord Hope, to speak about what might happen next week, but for now, to you, Nick McCarroll, this was quite a ruling today, wasn't it? The judges didn't hold back.
Incredible. We've run out of superlatives to describe it, but I would say remember where you were when you heard it, because these don't happen every day of the week in our constitution. In fact, you could argue overruling an action which was done in the Queen's name on the advice of our most senior minister, the Prime Minister, has never really happened for centuries.
It doesn't really harm any of this, does it? Boris Johnson's narrative that the establishment are trying to circumvent the will of the people. I mean, when you think about the establishment, what comes up in your mind other than, you know, judges in robes?
Well, that's partially true, but as Lord Hope said, a number of judges in robes ruled in favour of Boris Johnson, including the High Court in England, and including a Scottish judge in the Outer House of the Court of Session just last week. But you are right to an extent, but the point is that Boris Johnson has used every element of the establishment in order from the monarch to prorogue Parliament for a much longer period than has ever been done before, and that's raised suspicions. And the judges in Scotland, quite uniquely, have said that is out with our constitutional norm.
I mean, look, it's all about narrative, this really, isn't it? I mean, we saw Kwasi Kwarteng there in the business minister in James Cook's piece saying, oh, I don't believe this, but some people are questioning, you know, the partiality of judges. You know, why would he say that if he didn't believe it or he didn't want to feed a narrative? It's up to viewers to determine.
Incredible that ministers of the government are undermining the judiciary, which is a fundamental part of our constitution.
We're not in a good place as a country when that's going on, are we, particularly at the moment?
No, elements of our country seem to be falling apart at the moment, and the judges are putting forward a position which is arguable either way, as the division in the courts show, but it is an attempt to seriously look at what's going on in our country and try and put it in a constitutional framework.
Sure. Lord Hope, I want to come back to you in Edinburgh just now, if I may. This is going to end up at the Supreme Court in London next Tuesday. It's a very complex business, all this, but, you know, you used to sit there. Tell me this, is there a chance, given it's a UK court and it will study the Scottish decision on Scots law, I understand, and then another English appeal on English law, is there a chance that the judges there could rule that prorogation is illegal in Scotland but legal in England?
No, absolutely not. We're dealing with a matter of what is really UK law. It's what we call public law. And the public law rules are the same on both sides of the border. So we're not dealing with a situation where Scottish private law takes a different view. So I think you can put that one aside. There'll be a decision which will apply throughout the UK, a uniform decision one way or the other.
Sure. I'm not sure there's any great wisdom in putting anything aside at the moment in the way this story has developed over the last few years.
Well, I think you can put that one aside with great respect. There isn't a difference between the two systems.
OK, well, I thank you for your guidance on that and everything else you've offered tonight. And thank you to Dr Nick McCarroll here in the studio.
Well, our Westminster correspondent Rajdeep Sandhu is at the UK Supreme Court in London for us tonight. Rajdeep, all eyes on that place next week. But today's decision in the Scottish courts took many people by surprise. Can you just tell us what the reaction's been like down there with you?
Well, there was a lot of anger and a lot of confusion. Anger from those MPs who wanted to be let back inside Parliament, and confusion as to whether or not that was going to happen as quickly as they wanted. And add to that, into the mix of that, there was a moment this morning where perhaps an over-eager and over-excited source in number 10 decided to put suspicion over the biases over the judges, whether they were biased, and said, well, there was a reason that the case was heard in Scotland. Now, Downing Street rode back from that quite quickly and put aside any assertions that that was what they were thinking, and the Justice Secretary Robert Buckland even tweeted that he had complete confidence in the independence of the judges. But despite that, the government is not backing down over the actual court case and whether or not Boris Johnson has broken the law. They will be appealing that in the Supreme Court behind me next week, and it will be up to the judges here to decide whether or not Boris Johnson has broken the law by suspending Parliament.
And Rajdeep, if that decision does go against the Prime Minister, can he possibly stay in his post?
Well, we know that this is a government that can be unpredictable. It can take big, bold and risky moves, and that's why there has been so much happening in the last few weeks. But there will be a decision for Boris Johnson to make if this court does uphold that ruling from the Scottish court today, and that will be the decision of Boris Johnson whether to abide by this court and the law that has been imposed, or whether to take a different route and somehow try to circumvent that and all the risks that come with it. That will be a decision he'll have to make. But already MPs have today been talking about Boris Johnson having to resign because of his misleading the Queen, and that pressure would intensify 100-fold if it was upheld next week, and then this could all be a big gamble that backfired on Boris Johnson and cut his time in Downing Street very short.
OK, Rajdeep, and briefly if you can, the UK government has been forced to publish its no-deal Brexit contingency plan tonight, or Operation Yellowhammer. How many papers did we actually get to see, and what do they say?
Yes, so I have them here. There's 5 pages. It's marked official sensitive. It was forced out of the government, and a lot of it had actually already been leaked to the Sunday press about a week or so ago. And it includes things like public protests. There could be anger and frustration in the fishing industry. There could be delays at St Pancras of Dover, traffic congestion for days in Kent. You know, it doesn't make for very good bedtime reading. There are other documents that the MPs wanted related to why Parliament has been suspended and the reasons behind it. They wanted the private messages of staff who worked in Downing Street, and to that the government basically said, no way are we giving you those, because that would mean that the government would be breaking the law by publishing the private messages of private individuals.
OK, Rajdeep Sandhu at the Supreme Court in London, thank you very much indeed.
Right, all this talk about the Constitution, judiciary, the monarchy, it's probably a good time to take a bit of a breather and look at the politics of all this and remind ourselves where the political parties stand on Brexit. Our political correspondent Lindsay Bewes is here to help us go through all of that. Lindsay, let's start off with the Conservatives and the Labour Party. Just remind us, if you can, straightforwardly, what their policies are, their standpoints are on Brexit.
Yeah, let's start with the Tories, because we've been hearing a lot about their position over the last couple of weeks. Boris Johnson says he can get a deal from the EU, but if he doesn't, he's prepared to leave without one, and that's what he wants to do by the end of next month. Labour, well, they don't want to leave with no deal. Instead, they want to have a second referendum. They say if they won an election, they would negotiate what they describe as a credible new Brexit option, and they would pit that against Remain.
OK, and the Lib Dems and the SNP opposed to Brexit, we know. More straightforward?
Yeah, the SNP want to stop Brexit. They say if that took a second referendum, then fine, they would back Remain in that referendum. And they also say that they would revoke Article 50, that's withdrawing or cancelling Brexit, if that meant that we could prevent a no deal from happening. Now, the Lib Dems, they were the big champions of having this people's vote, as they call it, the second referendum. Now they're slightly changing their position. They're actually saying, well, in an election, we would just say we would cancel Brexit. And that's the policy that they're hoping that their party members will adopt at their upcoming conference.
Sure, that's pretty straightforward. And one party is absolutely unequivocal when it comes to Brexit. The clue's in the name, right? The Brexit Party.
Yeah, they want what they call a clean break Brexit, otherwise known as no deal. They just want out.
Yeah, don't they just? Right, the Labour Party are still struggling to get their narrative communicated absolutely clearly in all of this. And people right at the top of the party were still at odds over the best way forward today, weren't they?
They certainly were, yeah. Jeremy Corbyn wants this second referendum, this new deal he's going to negotiate against Remain. What he hasn't told us is which of those options he would support. Now, today, his deputy, Tom Watson, said actually Labour should be unequivocally backing Remain, and we should have that referendum before we even think about a general election. And he's not the only one putting pressure on Jeremy Corbyn. Shadow Cabinet members Diane Abbott, John McDonnell saying we need to get behind Remain. Scottish Labour, that's their policy. So pressure on Jeremy Corbyn, but he might be trying to just keep Labour Leave voters and Labour Remain voters happy. The problem with that is if you don't have a clear position, you can just fall through the electoral cracks.
Yeah, absolutely. OK, Lindsay, good stuff. As clear, I think, as it's possible to be at the moment on all of this. Many thanks for that.
Now, the disappearance of an Inverness mum and her young son more than 40 years ago turned into Scotland's longest-running missing persons inquiry. But today, a 77-year-old man was charged with the murder of Renee McRae and her 3-year-old son, Andrew.
They've not been seen since November 1976 and their bodies have never been found. William McDowell was arrested this morning. He appeared in court in Inverness earlier. Jackie O'Brien reports.
The Renee McRae case has become ingrained in the memories of most Highlanders, old enough to recall the deep concern for a mother and child who disappeared without trace. Her burnt-out BMW was discovered south of Inverness at the time, but the pair have never been found. The 43-year-old mystery has become one of Scotland's longest-running police investigations, and today it took another twist. 77-year-old William McDowell from Penrith appeared here in private at Inverness Sheriff Court this afternoon, charged with the murders of Andrew and Renee McRae and for attempting to pervert the course of justice. He made no plea and was granted bail. William McDowell was arrested in the north of England this morning by detectives from Police Scotland's major investigation team, which has been reviewing the case. Earlier this year, a search of Leonach Quarry on the outskirts of the Highland capital was started as part of a fresh inquiry.
Leonach Quarry alone, I'm really hopeful that there may be evidence within, and maybe the remains of Renee and Andrew within there, which we should and hopefully will bring our investigation further forward.
Their remains weren't recovered in the operation, but police say material removed from the quarry is still being searched for new evidence in a case that has endured for decades.
It was a poor police investigation right from the start, and this current major investigation team have gone right back to the beginning. They've interviewed new witnesses, they've re-interviewed witnesses who'd been spoken to previously.
After over 40 years of waiting, this has been the biggest development to date for the family of Rini McCrae, still waiting to find out the fate of their loved ones. Jackie O'Brien, BBC News.
It's Wednesday night, you're watching The Nine. Tonight's top story. Boris Johnson's decision to suspend Parliament is ruled unlawful by 3 judges in Scotland's highest court.
And still to come before 10, we have a special report from South Africa following the war veterans fighting to save some of the world's most endangered animals.
And Edinburgh's delayed new children's hospital now won't be open until next autumn.
Here is how to get involved in tonight's stories. You'll find us on Instagram and Twitter at BBC Scot 9. The 9 is our hashtag. Check out the BBC Scotland News Facebook page too. And of course, there is more on all of today's main stories on the BBC News website.
And later in the sport, Connie will be here. Hi Connie, what have you got for us tonight?
Good evening. We're talking Champions League tonight. The ladies are in action. A really good win for Glasgow City away in Russia. They won 1-0. Not such great news if you're a Hibs fan at the moment. They're currently struggling against Slavia Prague at Easter Road. It's 3-1. They're losing just now. So we'll bring you all the latest on that game. Also, we are building up to the Solheim Cup, of course, this weekend at Gleneagles. Yes, we'll be hearing from both camps. And also, are you a fan of the cricket?
Yeah.
Either of you?
Yeah.
I try to kind of understand it. I find it really confusing. I don't watch it a lot. I listen to it on the radio sometimes.
Well, the final Ashes test starts tomorrow. If you are a fan of cricket, then it's one you don't want to miss. And I suppose if you're Australian, you really don't want to miss it.
Well, yeah, if you're Australian, you've got a hangover.
Exactly.
You've already won.
Very much so.
Great stuff. All righty. Thank you very much indeed, Connie. We'll see you in a bit. Now, we have been hearing for years about the threat poaching poses to some of the world's best-loved animals. But despite all the international outrage and the efforts to stop it, the killing goes on. Criminal gangs from the Far East are thought to be behind most of the trade. It is big business, and it's left some species on the brink of extinction.
The National Geographic estimates 100,000 elephants were killed for their tusks between 2014 and 2017. And the people trying to protect them are victims too. 600 rangers have died in recent years, murdered by the poachers they're trying to stop. The problem's particularly acute in South Africa, where species like elephant and rhino are coming under ever-increasing threat.
The country is home to the vast majority of the world's white rhino population, around 18,000 animals in total. 1,000 of them were killed there in 2017 alone. Now, an international group of armed forces veterans is volunteering their time to train South African park rangers on how to prevent poaching. It is valuable conservation work, obviously, but it is helping them personally too, as they try to readjust to life after tours of duty. The Nine's Christopher Bobbin spent a week embedded with the group in one of South Africa's game reserves. You may find some of the images in his report distressing.
These lands were a key battlefield during the Boer War. Now, over a century later, men of the British military have returned to the same fields to engage in a conflict of a different kind.
See the poacher? You can point your weapon and go, "Hey! Stop! Stop where you are! Stop where you are! Hands up! Hands up!"
Here today, veterans turned conservationists are training Zulu park rangers in anti-poaching techniques.
What is my weapon? My voice, yeah? My voice, okay? Strong, aggressive, but you're not shouting like, "Hey, whatever." It's just nice, stern, okay? Okay, lift up the shirt!
The work that we do with Veterans Wildlife is focused predominantly on capacity building for rangers, and the work that these individuals are doing out in the field is very similar to what our role was as soldiers. They operate in hostile conditions sometimes, and they are facing a potential threat in respect of the poachers.
Stop moving!
The threat to the detainee, to the suspected poacher, is that I'm going to use that weapon, yeah? You're not going to fire. You just want them to think you might use it because you don't want to actually shoot him or endanger your teammate, yeah? So it's to intimidate.
I said drop your bomb!
These park rangers will be put through an intensive 2-week training regime by 3 Army and Royal Marine veterans. A bespoke program requested by the park's management.
You take the weapon off him, then giving him a chance to fire back, yeah?
But we can't reveal the name of this reserve, so to protect its personnel and the endangered wildlife within its borders. The park's elephants and rhinos are the poachers' prize that a mere 27 rangers are employed to protect. 27 men to guard a reserve of 22,000 acres, an area roughly the size of the city of Paris.
Like any military training, physical fitness is a key component, and it's no different for the Rangers here. That's why we're on a 6-mile morning run or tactical advance into battle. And with full kit, it's pretty intense, but it's exactly the kind of military discipline and fitness that the veterans here are trying to instill in the Rangers.
This job is emotionally hard and physically hard because every day we are climbing the mountains, we come across the dangerous animals like lions.
Rangers deploy on 20-day tours, 3 long weeks away from family. Poachers and animals alike are a constant danger, but even once home, their own communities can pose a threat.
My family, they usually ask me about what kind of job I do, how do I patrol, how do I protect myself from the rhinos. But I don't talk about rhinos. If I tell them where the rhinos stay, where the rhinos drink water, so they might go and ambush. Right now I miss my mom, I miss my kids, I miss my siblings. They are proud, but they are scared because they know that every minute I'm under the threat.
Okay, move into cover. Move, move, move. Okay, target down, target down, target down. Take your time, remember? Slow, smooth, smooth is fast. You move fast when you...
South African law prohibits park rangers from shooting to kill, except in self-defense, and so weapons training like this is crucial to dissuade and apprehend poachers. It's the most advanced arms training that these rangers have ever received, and it highlights the need to maximize their limited manpower with greater weapons competency. But this kinetic exercise highlights something else as well, the militarization of wildlife conservation.
Target down! Advance! They need this type of training solely for self-defense, specifically from well-trained and equipped poaching syndicates. So what you'll find all over Southern Africa and Africa is some of these extremely well-funded poaching syndicates. They have military background, so they come into reserves with high-caliber weapons, sometimes automatic weapons, sniper rifles. So in essence, the Rangers are actually outgunned.
Driven by the black market in China and Thailand, the numbers of the poaching epidemic are stark. Nearly 1,000 rhinos killed each year in South Africa, from a total population of 25,000. 2 rhinos poached every day for horns worth $60,000 per kilo, a value worth more than gold or cocaine by weight. Demand for rhino horn comes from Asia, but local desperation feeds the supply. With an unemployment rate of 27%, 30 million South Africans live in poverty. Just miles outside the reserve, a rhino horn can change a life.
The poachers are actually using the poor people. I mean, the money that comes after that is very much attractive to a point that even a good guy can turn bad.
Jabulo Hudla is the reserve's community liaison officer, working to dissuade locals from the temptation of poaching.
if I do not have anything, and then a guy comes and say, hey, go and do ABC, I will give you this. The only thing that will come to mind is the money and the problems that I'm facing. So our approach was to teach the young kids so that when they grow, they know the consequences of this poaching and how it will affect them. Because the older people, the war is already lost there, because this is not mainly a combat war, but it's a war that is being brought to us.
Enlisted into this war are the lessons learned in Iraq and Afghanistan. Battlefield experience adapted to benefit wildlife while helping the veterans themselves transition away from the conflicts that shaped them.
I was deployed to Afghanistan. We would deploy out and try and conduct these high-risk arrests of Taliban commanders. I didn't speak a lot about it to any friends or family. I sort of just kind of gritted my teeth and cracked on with it. But the transition was actually quite horrible for me, because when I was in the military, it felt like I had a purpose. And I was lost for a couple of years. Glovu, cover me. I'm going to search him. Okay, then you search. Yeah? Now I can use those soldiering skills I gained in the military and use it for, as I see it, a better cause.
I really struggled. It took me more than a year to find work, and that was not due to sort of a lack of effort. Trying to find a place in society and a new role, and giving me a sense of personal satisfaction and pride in what I'm doing.
You obeyed the rules of engagement, and you stuck within the law and within your powers afforded by the law. So I think from all of us, you guys did really well. That was really good to see.
Okay, no problem. Okay. To work us.
After a full day of hard training, at night, the real work begins. Hours of armed patrolling through the bush. But tonight, the Rangers and veterans will be especially vigilant because it's a full moon, what the Rangers here call a poacher's moon.
As we're patrolling now through the bush, if anything comes out, then one of us who's armed will take the necessary action. And so we'll just call you over to us to make sure that you're in a safe position. But you're not to move unless we tell you to. I'm having to whisper because not only are the Rangers looking out for potential poachers, but because of the wildlife around us. And that's the contradiction in the duty of the Rangers. The wildlife that they're here to protect pose the greatest danger to them.
Stand still, stand still. Do not move, stand still.
And on this night, it wouldn't be a poacher, but the angry snorting of a 2-ton rhino that would be the greatest threat to the very same men charged to protect it.
Rhino, Lewis, move up there. Stand still. Heavy snorting, so. Yeah, I reckon we just bug out the same way we came, yeah? All in agreement, yeah? Back off to the fence, and then we move back up the way we came.
Chris, get up the road, come towards me.
For now, only a close call with the protected, not the pursued.
Okay, one at a time, yeah?
And so the search for poachers continues, no end in sight. But for the veterans engaging in this conflict of conservation, the wars they left behind now offer a foothold on a new path. Christopher Bobbin, BBC News, South Africa.
Well, with us now is Dr. Jason Gilchrist, who's an ecologist and lecturer of natural species at Edinburgh's Napier University. Dr. Gilchrist, we were talking just towards the end of that film there here in the studio about the numbers of different species of rhino, for example, that are left in the wild. The number of elephant is diminishing. This really is a crisis, right? I mean, we hear about this all the time, but the word crisis is not overused here, is it?
No, absolutely. There's been huge population reductions in recent years in both elephant and rhino. And if we look even at South Africa, which is where the film was based, the number of animals that have been poached since the early 2000s, the rate of poaching has gone up 9,000% from the early 2000s.
I mean, the scale of the place, geographically, and the number of rangers and the technology they've got and all that makes it, I mean, the game's on the side of the poachers at the moment, isn't it? It's all about reversing that.
Yeah, it's a multifaceted approach. So the anti-poaching patrols that we saw there are part of the armoury to try to reduce the risk to individual rhino and elephants and other species of poaching.
Christopher was talking there about the value of rhino horn. I mean, I was based in Africa for quite a long time, covered a lot of this stuff. The one statistic that really struck me, and he mentioned it there, it's worth more than gold. It's worth more than its weight in gold and cocaine. When you're somebody living in a village out near there, and somebody comes and says, I'll give you a life-changing amount of money to help me get involved, get hold of a rhino horn, the risk is worth the reward, isn't it? The reward is worth the risk. They've got to change that, I guess. That's the calculation.
Absolutely, and that's part of the problem why we've seen this escalation and militarisation, which we saw in the film there. So I think it's really sad and really shocking that we've reached a point where there are people on both sides, the poachers and the anti-poaching patrols, who ultimately are shooting at each other. And the stat was given there with regards to how many rangers are killed. I'd like to see the stat for how many poachers are killed as well. So the whole problem attached to poaching, it's not just about wildlife and death of animals, it's also about people, whether it be deaths or other indirect effects.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you've just touched on it there, but the bit that struck me in that piece, once you hear all the statistics, is that there's no shoot to kill policy. You know, they're told to use their voices as weapons. I mean, could that be seen as a bit of a soft touch, given that we know this is a crisis that's not getting any better?
We're looking at South Africa there, and there are certainly other parts of the world where officially or unofficially, and perhaps understandably, when you look at the dangers that those guys are going into, that they're not necessarily taking prisoners when it comes to meeting poachers, because their lives and their families' lives are at risk when they're there.
Yeah, these parks...
It's scary.
Yeah, it is, absolutely.
Yeah.
These parks are surrounded by, poor African villages. And there's another problem that people are talked down to over there and told we have to protect these species because they bring in huge tourist revenue or they're very important to us. Now, if you've lived in this village for a long time and an elephant is something that, tramples your crops occasionally, and if you hear that the government's getting very rich on the tourist dollar that this wildlife brings in, but you're not seeing a cut of that action, then you're going to be less empathetic to the cause as well, aren't you? That's
absolutely. So I said earlier that it's about a multifaceted approach to trying to reduce the numbers of animals that are being poached. And one of the ways to do that is to empower local communities and to ensure the ecotourism revenue. So these sorts of large mammals, elephants, rhinos, lions, tigers, wherever we are in the world, they have the potential to bring in lots of dollars. The key is that those dollars aren't corrupted or held elsewhere, that they go to the communities. And I've worked in places where the tourism revenue is invested back into health and education in local communities within or surrounding protected areas. And that's really important so that the community has a vested interest in protecting those animals.
Sure. We don't have time, unfortunately, to get into some of the other stuff, like cutting off the market for rhino horn in the Far East, all those really valuable things. Sad thing is, we've been hearing these arguments for a decade and more, and the fight's being lost. Very briefly, is there any ground for optimism?
It's not going away. I think the key for me is that we have to keep pushing and we have to keep fighting.
Yeah.
And the point they made at the end there, demand reduction, if you reduce the consumer desire for products like rhino horn, the animals will not get poached, people will not be getting killed in the field trying to protect them.
Well, they've got to find a way somehow, don't they? Because species are really dying out on our watch. Jason Gilchrist, thank you very much indeed for lending us your expertise.
Thank you.
Now, commemorations have been held across the United States to mark the 18th anniversary of the 9/11 terror attacks. Almost 3,000 people were killed at the World Trade Center in New York and the Pentagon on September the 11th, 2001. President Donald Trump led a moment's silence at the White House today before laying a wreath at the Pentagon.
Two boats thought to be carrying nearly 20 migrants were intercepted early today off the Kent coast. It comes after a record 86 attempted the crossing yesterday. The BBC understands that there were 6 people on the first boat, while the second, which was carrying 13 people, including 3 children, was already sinking when the lifeboat arrived. One man was airlifted to hospital.
Police in Edinburgh say one person has died after yesterday's fire in Fountain Bridge near Toll Cross. Emergency services were called following a report of an explosion in a tenement at around 5 p.m. yesterday evening. One person was found dead on the second floor of the building. An investigation into the cause of the fire is underway, but it's not thought to be suspicious.
And Glasgow City Council has banned a number of marches and protests planned for this weekend. It follows recent violent disturbances at similar events. The Public Processions Committee has been considering proposals for 4 loyalist parades and a Republican procession. Council officials recommended all should be banned. Police said recent events suggested disorder at the weekend would be likely.
Edinburgh's new Sick Children's Hospital was meant to open over the summer, but now we've learned it won't be fully operational for at least another year. An inspection just before patients were due to arrive discovered safety concerns over its ventilation system.
Today, the Health Secretary Jean Freeman told MSPs significant work needs to be done to make sure the site is safe. That is expected to cost at least £16 million. Our health correspondent Lisa Summers reports.
2 months on, it lies empty and idle, all the while costing the public over £1 million a month. And it's about to cost even more. The Health Secretary arrived at the Chamber this afternoon armed with answers.
Cabinet Secretary.
Shortly to deliver more bad news.
I have concluded that children's services will remain on their current site until next autumn. Call Miles Briggs.
Opposition parties were quick to criticise the Health Secretary.
The Cabinet Secretary today expects us to believe that human error and confusion and a failure of an environmental matrix means that no SNP ministers are responsible for 7 years of this delayed project.
This project is a disaster. Human error, confusion over the application of standards and guidance, and missed opportunities to rectify mistakes.
Meanwhile, away from the political arena at the old Sick Kids Hospital, it means another year where staff and families will have to make do in a hospital bursting at the seams.
It's disappointing just to think all that money that's been spent and will be spent over the next year wasted. Where else could the money be going?
It's disappointing, isn't it, that the new hospital won't be open, but yeah, they're still doing a grand job in there, so that's the main thing, looking after the kids.
Reports commissioned by the government found the ventilation problems dated back to an error made in 2012. But now additional work is needed to make sure the water and drainage systems are safe. Similar problems were identified at the largest hospital in Scotland, built by the same contractor, also under scrutiny. This afternoon, the Health Secretary robustly defended her role.
At what point does the government and you as Health Secretary have to shoulder responsibility for what has gone wrong?
I am shouldering responsibility for what's going wrong with these projects because, first of all, I halted the move to the new site. That was exactly the right thing to do. I commissioned the reports to give me the information that I've outlined today. I will take responsibility for ensuring that we move to the new site when it is compliant and safe. And I'm taking responsibility to say we cannot keep repeating these mistakes, so we will create very swiftly that national centre of expertise that will take responsibility for major infrastructure builds.
A reminder of how close this hospital came to activity. Colouring pens sit on empty tables. Toys are stacked against the wall. Instead, it will be well into next year before it opens its doors. Lisa Summers, BBC News.
Now, enjoying an afternoon at the football doesn't come cheap these days, especially if you follow a team in Scotland's top flight. BBC Scotland's been looking into the cost of the beautiful game. It turns out an adult ticket for a Scottish Premiership match costs a minimum of £20. If you want to see a top category game at Ibrox, you're going to pay £52.
And once you factor in the programme, the food or all the other extras if you go along with your family, the day out can cost far more.
Well, I don't think it's fair. The prices are ridiculous.
For some folk who can afford it, it's fine, but then others obviously can't, so you're losing some fans due to ticket prices.
And just on that, Celtic are yet to confirm their own price for their most expensive single ticket. Well, here to talk about this are Paul Goodwin from the Scottish Football Supporters Association and Craig Telfer from the BBC Scotland football programme A View from the Terrace. Thank you both very much for joining us. Paul, I want to start with you. Adult football fans cannot buy a ticket for a Scottish Premiership game for less than £20. Is that fair for fans?
I think it's not bad value, really.
Depends who you follow. I've not had great value this season as a Hearts supporter.
I think the problem you have is that it's one of those things, especially if it's a cold February Tuesday evening where the weather's terrible and it's nothing each. You don't know what you're getting, and that's part of the problem, I think. But overall, as a package, if you look at what it costs versus other sports, other leisure activities, going to the cinema, for example, with family and things, it's not that bad value. And if you can pick and choose, of course, as a football fan, that's hard to do.
Yeah, of course, because you've got some families that they potentially want to go to all of the home matches, and for some, if you're talking to up to £52 for a ticket, that's just going to be completely unaffordable, isn't it?
It's a huge cost, and I think what you're finding is more and more people actually are selecting the games that they go to. There's always a cry of, we've increased the number of season tickets that we've sold, but there are obviously different categories within that as well, whether it's senior citizens or kids, and a lot of kids ones are free as well. So I'm not sure it's increasing that much. The feeling that we get is there's not people jumping up and down about the cost, and I think other aspects to that is a lot of Scottish fans go to elsewhere, and aside of the German experience, which we could talk about for a long time, if they go to England, for example, you can't get a ticket at a Chelsea match for any less than £80.
Yeah. Craig, you guys have touched on this kind of area in A View from the Terrace in the past, I think. I guess prices don't really matter as much as performances, right? I mean, if your team's garbage, you're going to think twice on a Saturday afternoon. If they're winning, you can't get near the place.
I think you're absolutely right, yes. Form is a big factor in whether or not you'll go to the game. For instance, if your team has been destroyed 7-0 the previous week, you're perhaps not as likely to go. Whereas if you're just in the back of a scintillating performance with a last-minute winner, of course you're more likely to go to the following match.
And do we see much evidence of a drop in prices? Because teams do it from time to time. You drop prices for kids, do one of these little the individual gimmicks or efforts they put on. Do they make that much of a difference?
That's a good question. For instance, an example from a few years ago, Raith Rovers, for instance, they put their season ticket prices up when they were in the Championship, but following an outcry from fans, they reduced the price, but they said we can only maintain this price if it's sustainable. There was no real difference to the number of people coming along to them. In the second week, it actually dropped less than 2,000, which was the number of supporters they needed through the gate to keep the prices sustainable. And so they had to put the prices back up to the original price.
Paul, you were saying, people aren't shouting, jumping up and down about this. But actually, if the prices were a bit lower, would we not see football stadiums with far more people in them?
I don't think you would.
Really?
I think the way that you consume football is like not any other product. You're there primarily because of loyalty, family history, connections, community. It's not like any other product. If you have a bad experience at supermarket A, you just go to supermarket B. You can't really necessarily do that with football. We do sometimes, I mentioned football tourism, or, if you end up, you're down in the northwest England, you might want to go and see well, maybe Bolton not anymore, but Blackpool or something like that, if you're in that area, there's a bit of that goes on, and we get some of that when we come home at Scotland. And I think one of the big failings that we have as an industry is we should be attracting more people who do come here. We've got a massive tourist industry, an all year round industry. Let's get them to the football.
Yeah, I guess the clubs will charge what they think they can get away with charging. But actually, I think surveys show that per head of population, in comparison to other European countries, Scots like to attend football. I mean, judging on the national team's performance over recent weeks, we're pretty guff. Why do we still have this obsession with a sport we're not very good at?
Because it's the best sport in the world. It's the best feeling in the world.
Here's your answer.
When we touched on it earlier, see when your team, it's been a fantastic end-to-end performance against your rivals, and you score a last-minute winner. Can you name a better feeling than a last-minute winner?
A while back, but
but it's that. And it's football's about. It's about the bond. It's about community. It's about family. It's about seeing your friends. It's about. It transcends sport.
And that's what keeps us going back. That addiction, that hope, that feeling.
And
Thanks,
we're
guys.
running out of time. Thank you both very much for joining us. And that leads us very nicely into the sport with Connie.
Yes, that's what keeps me in a job as well.
Yeah, there you go.
About that. Good evening to you. We start tonight with the Women's Champions League in Glasgow City. They scored a vital away goal en route to the first leg of their last 32 meeting with Cherdivano. They won 1-0 in Russia with Hayley Lauder on the score sheet, but it wasn't great news for Hibernian. They got off to a great start at Easter Road, taking the lead in the second minute from Siobhan Hunter's strike, but their Czech opponents replied with 3 goals before half-time, including this spectacular long-range strike. And worse was to come for Hibs as Slavia added a 4th in the second half to take control of the 2-legged tie. It finished 4-1. Now to Gleneagles, where preparations are continuing ahead of this week's Solheim Cup. The most prestigious event in women's golf will see the best players in Europe taking on the best players from the USA over 3 days. There's Scottish representation on the European team from non-playing captain Katrina Matthew, and the USA are looking for their 3rd straight win in the biennial event. The hosts are aiming to take home advantage and claim the trophy.
I just think this year the team is very balanced. There's not as many long hitters on the American side as there usually is, and there's quite a few long hitters on our side, so it kind of levels it out, especially on a golf course like this, so it should suit us.
It's something that doesn't come around very often, and to play for your country is there's a lot of great things you can take away from this week, and obviously winning would be the icing on the cake, but we're out here grinding away, and it's going to be a fun week.
To cricket, and England have dropped 2 players for the final Ashes test. Last week's defeat to Australia left the hosts unable to win the series, but star batsman Ben Stokes, unfit to bowl because of a shoulder injury, will still play a part. Australia have an unassailable 2-1 lead in the series, but they're determined to end their summer on high. Joe Wilson reports.
Sky high in July, sunk in September. That's the Ashes. Jason Roy was dropped from England's Test team today while he was a World Cup winning hero on the same spot 8 weeks ago. The Oval was where England celebrated their World Cup success. White ball, one-day cricket, the fulfilment of a long-term dream. Now, is that really what mattered?
Whatever happens this week, do you think this deserves to be seen as a successful year for English cricket?
Absolutely. To win the first 50-over World Cup is a huge achievement for English cricket. So absolutely should be seen as a successful year. But we've got a chance to level this series and make it slightly better than it looks right now.
Well, in truth, there are a number of England players who now have a last opportunity to show their best form. And if England win this Test match, they will level the series 2-2. But even if that happens, it will be these Australians who retain the Ashes urn and all that traditional glory. So they might relax in this match? Not likely.
We've spoken about it a lot as a group that last week's result was brilliant and we played very well, but all the guys are fully aware that that this Test match is bigger than that one. This is our grand final.
Well, all Australia's captain really needs to do is remind Steve Smith to come back tomorrow. Yeah, well, England do have a foolproof way of stopping Smith. End the summer and lock the doors. Joe Wilson, BBC News at the Oval.
And finally, a new world record has been set after 3 motocross riders completed what's known in the business as a synchronised double backflip train. Now, it's said to be one of the most difficult and dangerous tricks in freestyle motocross. Certainly not something we'd advise you to try at home. The riders who were brave enough to take part in Caerphilly in Wales were Jackson Strong, Josh Sheehan and Luke Ackerman. Congratulations to them. You'd have to be just a little bit mad to do that, surely.
Thank you very much, Connie. Now, being a Wednesday, Laura McGee will have your entertainment news. The edit is on tonight. What have you got for us tonight,
we've
Laura?
got loads on tonight. We've been speaking to Emily Sandé ahead of her new series. It's coming to BBC Scotland. It starts on Thursday. She's trying to find Scotland's best busker. She's been all across the country, whether it's pop, classical, country, you name it, she's looking for it. And the prizes, the top 6 basically get to perform with the Scottish Symphony Orchestra. We've also got James Bond, Fast and Furious, and we've got a little bit of Downton Abbey because David Farrell went to the premiere.
He did indeed.
Yes, we're on at 11:45 tonight.
Brilliant. Buskers are around, aren't they? Jerry Cinnamon's seen to that.
Yeah, indeed.
Excellent. And the weather's here.
The weather's here.
Well, so the weather, it's time for the weather.
The weather is
and
here.
Kirstine is here.
Lots going on, Martin.
Nice day today.
Nice day, a blustery day though. Yes, a mixed bag over the next few days. Thanks, Rebecca. Yes, today brought us some sunshine and it also brought us some showers across much of the country. And as we head through the overnight period, I think we'll see dry conditions for a time with some clear periods, although just overnight during the early hours we will begin to see the first signs of this next area of low pressure moving in, what is left of ex-tropical storm Gabrielle. For us though, it's bringing nothing more than a spell of rather wet weather into the west initially tomorrow morning and then gradually pushing its way southwards and eastwards during the day, becoming confined to the southeast come the mid to late afternoon period. Behind it, a lot of dry weather with some good spells of sunshine developing. Quite a fresh feel though and still blustery conditions, particularly so across the north of the country. For the southern upland, still more in the way of cloud at this stage, some patchy rain affecting parts of the southeast. For the northeast though and the Northern Isles, largely dry, some spells of sunshine. The odd shower for the Northern Isles and brisk westerly winds here. Into tomorrow evening, that rain pulls away to the southeast, following on a dry night with clear periods, just the odd shower across the northwest. And Friday is looking dry to a large extent too, with some spells of brightness and some sunshine. Some showers though affecting the western and Northern Isles and around the northwest Highlands, and it will remain windy across the north too. Quite a fresh feel with highs of around 14 to 16 Celsius. A look ahead to the weekend, and we are expecting high pressure to dominate to a large extent. However, it won't ward off low pressure from passing to the north of Scotland, bringing with it a spell of really quite wet and indeed windy weather to these areas. Outbreaks of rain and strong to gale force winds affecting the north coast and the Northern Isles especially. It's looking drier though on Sunday. That's the forecast. Back to you both.
Thank you very much, Kirsty. It's
Thank
kind of a
you
mixed
very
bag,
much.
and it's not actually looking good for your golf this weekend, Martin Geisler.
Well, it'll be all right. It'll be all right. The golf will be good.
Yes, of course it will. Thank you very much, Kirsty. Now, finally tonight, what is the best thing you've ever found when you were out for a wander?
Nice little pub, log fire. Oh no, you're not asking me, are you? You want me to read these words? Okay.
Read those words.
Earlier this year, metal detectorist Michelle Val was exploring near Loch Ness when she found this, a 17th century gold ring. It's thought to have belonged to a courtier of King James VII, and it has just sold for more than £17,000. How about that? Detectoring.
Wow.
It's a big thing, though.
That is, yes. A big business, obviously.
Yeah, well, she's 17 grand richer. Well done to her. Now, here's how to get involved in tonight's stories. You'll find us on Instagram and Twitter at BBC Scot 9. The 9 is our hashtag. Check out the BBC Scotland News Facebook page too, and there is more, as ever, on today's main stories on the BBC News website.
But that is all from Martin and me for tonight. We'll be back for more tomorrow. Same time, same place. We'll see you then. But for now, goodbye.
Thanks for watching. Good night.
It feels like the beginning of something.
How big is this rock going to be?
It sounds like heaven.
You can hear screams, Jake. Screams.
End this madness now.
Is it plugged in? Give me that beat.
I know how you must be feeling.
Show us what you got.
What if I could make everyone happy with this?
This autumn on the BBC Scotland channel. Brilliantly unexpected.
From the first whistle to the last, the weekend's action kicks off with Arbroath versus Partick Thistle, Friday at 7 on the BBC Scotland channel.
Now on BBC Scotland, using rare archive footage and with his own words, we tell the story of the meteoric rise and fall of cult Scottish sportsman, Jockey Wilson.
The tension showing on Jockey's face. One dart could give him the World Championship.
The experience that started me on the road to a darts career happened in the Lister. One night, I was sitting with my pint, and a team match was going on. They announced they needed another player. I was roped in. Some people call it the whitewash. In Scotland, it's the granny. I was humiliated. I vowed to myself that would never happen again. I got an old dartboard, so I just kept practicing and practicing, day and night. You get that way when you're on the dole. You've got all the time in the world to be single-minded.
Jockey Wilson. Jockey Wilson, champion of the world.
Have you won any big money this year?
I've won a few quid.
Yeah! Jockey's the champion!
In the southeast corner of the county and looking out on the North Sea is Kirkcaldy.
There's no prouder son of the lang tune than John Thomas Wilson. It's where I belong. And now perhaps